could barely walk down the hallway of the school. My thinness made my body look like a skeleton, with jutting ribs, sunken cheekbones, and huge bruises under my eyes. Then I saw my classmate ahead of me. "Paul," he asked in horror, "what was wrong with me?" I clenched my fists in anger. "It's all your fault." It all started when he transferred to our class a few weeks ago. Paul immediately attracted the girls' attention. A tall, dark-haired guy with brown eyes, and he looked older than his years. It was love at first sight. But Paul wouldn't date a fat girl like me. Because of my weight, I had never had a boyfriend. I tried to lose weight. I dieted, went to the gym, but in vain. Even doctors shrugged their shoulders. I had a bad metabolism. I almost accepted that no boy would look at me. But then Paul started hitting on me, winking at me, complimenting me, and once he even saved me from bullies who called me fat. He said I was very beautiful and I shouldn't listen to anyone. No one had ever been so kind to me. I liked Paul so much that after a week of dating, I finally decided to tell him. Here goes nothing. After school, I asked Paul to stay. My heart was pounding with excitement, and I blurted out, "I like you." Paul was silent for a long time, and I was literally burning with shame, but then he smiled and said he liked me too. I was dizzy with happiness. But Paul immediately added that he would only be with me on one condition: if I lost weight. Something snapped inside me. But I would do anything for Paul. Right after school, I went to the gym. In the middle of the road, a promoter stopped me and handed me a flyer. "Hey beauty, weight loss courses have opened here. Here's an invitation to a free session." I hesitated, but the promoter assured me, "A week and you're a model." If it was for free, then it was worth a try. I thanked the promoter and went to the specified address. The entrance to the studio was in the courtyard and led to the basement. Inside, a nice girl met me and immediately invited me to a session. It was led by a man in a black hoodie who introduced himself as a teacher. I left the session an hour later and immediately ran home to weigh myself. But as soon as I saw the number, everything swam before my eyes. -3 kilos? I double-checked several times. Wow, the courses were working. I was so excited that the next day, I immediately ran to the session. But the manager stopped me, saying that the subsequent sessions cost $1,000. But this was all my savings. There was no choice. I wanted to lose weight so much that when I got home, I took out my stash and frantically counted it. Damn, not enough. I was almost desperate when I found more bills in my jacket pocket. Got it. Mom came home from work and asked me where I was going. Panic gripped me. I immediately blurted out that I was going out with my friends. My ears burned. It was the first time I had lied so blatantly to my mom, but I couldn't tell her about the courses. She wouldn't understand. After giving all the money to the manager, I went to the second session, and after that, I immediately ran to the weigh scales. Another -3 kilos. I also saw the result in the mirror. My belly got flatter and my thighs were getting thinner. Even Paul at school said I was getting prettier and hugged me. My classmates blushed with envy, and I was over the moon. I should lose a little more weight, and we would be together. But where could I get the money? At school, I only thought about it until I realized that I had only one option: to ask my parents. At home, I walked over to my mom, biting my lip. If only she would agree. But as soon as I started talking, Mom interrupted. Money didn't grow on trees. I immediately went to my room, slamming the door behind me. She never understood me. But Paul would not wait. He would find a beauty and all was lost. Stop. And if I stole the money, a chill ran through my body. I never stole anything, but my parents themselves are to blame. They couldn't understand me. While they were in the kitchen, I crept into their bedroom and opened my mom's bag. The wallet was still there. With trembling hands, I took out the money, and then I heard footsteps approaching. I felt a rush of heat. I hurriedly shoved the wallet back in and put the money in my pocket. Immediately, the door swung open. Mom looked at me sternly and asked me what I was doing. Swallowing, I managed to say that I wanted to apologize to her. I gave her a quick peck on the cheek and ran outside. I couldn't wait to lose more weight. On the session, I gave all the money to the manager. Although I felt bad, thoughts about losing weight and Paul occupied my head. The manager took me to a session. After that, I rushed home to the weigh scales again. -3. I lost a lot of weight. And I could finally date Paul. But he shook his head. You're still not skinny enough. I almost fell over, but where could I get the money? I felt overwhelmed. Paul and I could never be together. I was thinking of borrowing from my classmates, but no one wanted to lend me that much. There was only one thing left to do: steal from my parents again. In the evening, after waiting for my mom to leave the bedroom, I slipped inside. My heart was pounding. Where was this wallet? I looked around the room and noticed it on the nightstand. Great! I immediately grabbed the wallet as the door opened. My heart sank when I saw Mom's furious expression. "It's not what you think!" Mom shouted that I was taking something forbidden because I had lost so much weight, and I was sneaking cash out of the wallet. I was so hurt to hear that. Mom added if this happened again, she would send me to the clinic for treatment. I almost burst into tears and immediately ran to my room. In the morning, I went to school in a terrible mood. Paul wouldn't be with me, all in vain. But then a guy came up to me and exhaled. What a slim little thing. This was the promoter who told me about the courses. What if he helped me? I asked if he could lend me money, and the promoter was surprised. Where could he get this amount from? His words made me droop. The promoter, noticing this, smiled encouragingly and asked me why I needed the money. Almost crying, I blurted it out. Then he frowned. But how did the session itself go? I shrugged. The teacher in the hoodie took me to the room, and after that, I didn't remember anything, but the main thing was the weight went away. Leo, that was the promoter's name, looked puzzled and asked again, "What do you mean you don't remember? This is all terribly strange. He himself never met with the boss, only invited the girl to a trial session. What if this was dangerous for the health?" I thought about it. Maybe Leo was right. I was so obsessed with losing weight that I didn't even ask why my weight was going down. What if there was something illegal there? It was impossible not to remember the whole session. Leo looked me straight in the eye. "Let's put a brooch with a camera and find out what's going on there." I nodded immediately. I wanted to know what was going on in this strange center. But where could I get money for a session? My parents would put me in a clinic if I said a word about the courses. Leo then asked if they could hold a session on credit. I thought about it. The manager knew that this was not my first session, and she could be persuaded, but we would play a scene. Leo bought a camera brooch, and we attached it to my blouse. I went to another session. The manager greeted me with a smile. I started to rummage through my pockets and suddenly froze in fright. Damn, I left my wallet at home. I dialed Leo and said in a sweet voice, "Daddy, I left my wallet at home. Will you pay for my session later?" Leo replied that he would do anything for the sake of his beloved daughter. The manager was silent for a long time, and I already thought that nothing would work out, but then she nodded and said to go in. I went into the dark room where the teacher was sitting, as usual, in a hoodie. I sank into a chair, and after that, I didn't remember anything. When I went outside, Leo was waiting for me, looking excited. We sat on a bench in the park, plugged the brooch into the laptop, and watched. In the video, the teacher in the hoodie started talking to me in a monotone, and I started to pass out. As soon as I fell asleep, the teacher took off his hoodie. My breath caught in my throat. "Paul?" While I was under hypnosis, he gave me some kind of decoction to drink. Leo and I exchanged glances. So Paul was a fraud. And he put girls into hypnosis, and I liked him. And suddenly a skater bumped into us. In his hands, he was holding a glass of juice, which spilled right on the laptop. It immediately crackled, and the screen went blank. I couldn't believe it. We lost the recording. Tears welled up in my eyes. Paul would cheat on girls with impunity, and I wouldn't do anything about it. Leo immediately put his arm around me and told me that we would bring Paul to light. He had a plan. The next day, Leo helped me get my makeup done. He pulled me into a corset, sculpted the bones on my face and arms, and painted the bruises under my eyes. When I saw myself in the mirror, I was horrified. The Walking Dead. So, I was walking exhausted down the hallway, barely dragging my feet along the wall. Paul saw me, froze in fright, and asked what was wrong with me. "It's all your fault," I shouted. I saw everything. Hypnosis doesn't work on me. Paul turned pale and blurted out that he didn't want to bring me to this state. We needed to call an ambulance. Got it. I straightened abruptly, showing him the recorder. Now I had the confession. He was not going anywhere. At that moment, Leo came around the corner and sternly snapped that it would be better for Paul to go to the police and confess. Paul looked at us with wild eyes and then abruptly took off for the exit. No, Leo and I ran after him, but Paul was much faster than us. Just as I was losing hope, the police suddenly burst into the school. They immediately detained a reluctant Paul, and Leo whispered that he had decided to call the police in advance. I looked at him gratefully. What would I do without you? Paul's trial soon took place. It turned out that he was not a student at all, but a 35-year-old man who had been wanted by the police for a long time. He deliberately pretended to be a student and flirted with fat girls, persuading them to lose weight and lured them to his sect. Under hypnosis, he inspired them to come again and again, giving all the money. Mom said she was very proud of me, and I did find a boyfriend in the person of Leo. And even though I later gained weight again, my health was much more important to him than my weight. And if a guy is more concerned about your appearance, does he really love you? I struggled with all my strength, but they laid me on the sacrificial altar. No, please, let me go. Mom. Dad, why don't you interfere? The freako was already reaching for my throat. Is this the end? And I had so many plans for my new life. It all started when we moved here. On the first day, I told the whole class that I wanted to be a class president, and no one seemed to like it. My classmates called me an upstart and locked me in the locker room after class. I thought I was going to stay there until morning, but my classmate Kurt rescued me. He said that he was also locked in the school closet. After that, Kurt began to choke. I was so scared. He took the inhaler out of his pocket, but his hands were shaking so badly that he dropped it. I immediately picked it up and gave it to Kurt. When he felt better, he said that he was excited by the memory of the closet. From stress, he sometimes had asthma attacks. Afterward, Kurt walked me home. I was in a great mood. I think I had a friend, and I told him he could come to me whenever he wanted. In the evening, when we were going to have dinner, the doorbell rang. It was Kurt, with his parents. It was strange that Kurt came unannounced, and with his parents, but I was glad to see him anyway and invited them inside. Over dinner, my parents and Kurt became very friendly. They gave us a book about the Aztecs and invited us to the book club. They said that at the next meeting there, they would discuss how sacrifices helped enlightenment. I thought it was very strange to discuss such a thing in a quiet suburb, but my parents really liked it at the club. They began to disappear there and made many friends. After one meeting, my mother brought a bottle of red, smelly liquid and said it was a rabbit blood. Yes, that's what I believe. Not funny at all, Mom. But at dinner, she put it in my face. She said it was good for the body and soul. I flatly refused to drink it. A couple of days later, Kurt called and invited us to spend a weekend at his family estate. All the members of the book club would be there. My parents were happy, and I didn't want to go to the fart party. I was afraid of hurting Kurt. Besides, I'd never been to the family estates, so I agreed. Kurt's country house was huge, a whole castle in the middle of the forest, surrounded by a high fence. Near the entrance, the guards asked me to hand over my phone. Kurt explained that otherwise, the internet would distract from live communication. I had to give my phone to these big guys. We were invited to lunch. I saw huge tables with white tablecloths and my parents at one of the tables. They motioned for me to sit next to them. What a solemn atmosphere. I hope they bring me something delicious. I'm so hungry. But they brought us glasses with a thick red liquid. I immediately refused to drink it. Then some crazy old man started yelling at me, saying that I didn't respect the traditions of the community. It was the elixir of youth, rabbit blood. So Mom wasn't kidding. To drink blood? No way. I won't. Are you crazy? The guards immediately grabbed me and led me out from the table. What's going on here? I called my parents, but they didn't even turn around. I tried to pull away, but my vision suddenly blurred. I woke up in a rabbit cage. How did this happen? I panicked, but I couldn't move. The cage was so cramped. My whole body ached from the awkward position. Why are you doing this to me? Suddenly, Kurt appeared out of the darkness with a bunch of keys. He saved me again. I started to run, but Kurt stopped me. It turns out that I insulted all the members of the club by not drinking rabbit blood. It was sacred, and the rejection of it promised the whole community misfortune. What nonsense! Kurt said that he was scared himself. There was nothing like this at the previous meetings. But it was too dangerous to run now. The whole area was guarded and we'd better think about how to pass unnoticed. He was probably right. Kurt led me into the house. They were all wearing animal masks, moving rhythmically to some strange music. A man in a mask with horns came up to me and asked me if I realized everything. I immediately asked for forgiveness. After that, I was told that I would have to make amends tomorrow. The community had already found some kind of task for me. In the morning, all the guests dragged some heavy iron cases out of the basement and put them in the cars. I was already exhausted. Suddenly, I stumbled and dropped one case. My parents immediately shouted at me to be careful. When everyone left for lunch, I decided to find out what was so valuable inside these cases. I opened one of them, and there were bloody human organs inside. Heart, lungs. I touched it with trembling hands. They were so cold and slimy. I almost threw up. I've got to get out of here. I couldn't find a place until nightfall. I flinched at every rustle, afraid that someone would come for me. I was beginning to think Kurt had left me. He knocked on my door after midnight. Kurt found a gap in the fence, and we needed to run right now. We were almost to the fence when I heard the guard's footsteps. They were getting closer. Damn it. We hid behind the rose bushes. The thorns bit painfully into my arms. I couldn't help but cry out. The guard immediately pointed his flashlight at us. This was the end. Then Kurt picked up a rock from the ground and threw it in the direction of the road. The guard turned around and headed there. And we ran as fast as we could. When the estate was already far away, we decided to take a break. I had no strength left and it was terribly hot. We sat down on a fallen tree and Kurt took off his hoodie. His inhaler fell out of his pocket. I picked it up and was about to put it back when I saw the phone light up in his pocket. Kurt, where is it from? Kurt, are you with them? I jumped up and backed away. And Kurt gave me a nasty smile. I was paralyzed with fear. I ran with the last of my strength, and everything went dark. I woke up on Kurt's shoulder. He was dragging me deeper into the woods. My hands were bound by his hoodie. Let me go! I tried to pull away, but he only got angry. He said that I was honored to be chosen, that my kidneys and heart would serve the stronger and more worthy. Then I remembered the organs in the cases. I started kicking and screaming for him to let me go, but it was no use. He wasn't listening to me. Just then, Kurt carried me out into a large clearing. In the middle was a huge bonfire, next to which was an altar. It was surrounded by people in white robes, the same guests I'd seen at dinner. As soon as they noticed Kurt, they bowed oddly in front of us. For a moment, it was very quiet. Even rabbits in the huge cases did not make a sound. 2 guards grabbed me and dragged me to the altar. No, please, don't. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed my parents among the cultists. Mom, Dad, why don't you do anything? But they didn't even look in my direction. Their eyes were fixed on Kurt, who was following me regally. I was forced down on the altar, and the rope was tightly tied around my arms. I was shouting for them to let me go. But then Kurt came up to me and the cultists started shouting his name. No, Kurt! Don't you dare touch me! His face was covered in sweat, and his hands were reaching for my throat, second by second, getting closer and closer. When suddenly, he coughed and began to choke. This was my chance. I struggled to free my hand. Isn't that what you're looking for? I was clutching the inhaler Kurt had dropped on the way. Let me go and you'll get it back. Kurt was frantically gasping for air. He just toppled over from suffocation. In the end, he turned pale and grabbed a huge cage to keep from falling. With his last breath, he nodded so that they released me. After the guards took the ropes off me, I threw the inhaler with all my might somewhere in the darkness of the night. Holding his throat, Kurt followed, disappearing into the trees. And then the cultists began to surround me. Their eyes glittered from under their hoods. I couldn't find a single drop of humanity in them. Cultists were coming from all sides. It felt like they were going to tear me apart with their hands. I was trapped. Their hands were almost touching me. But when they came close, then they suddenly dropped to their knees. My father said that I had taken power from the last priest, and from that day on, they would worship me. The cultists fell silent at my feet, waiting for the order. What a turn! I turned to where Kurt was crawling in the dark. What a pathetic rabbit. Grab him, I ordered.